Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. That night. The street was so quiet that I could hear my footsteps echoing in the distance. The clock on my phone was flashing to 37 a.m. I had just finished my shift at the coffee shop, and I was tired and dragged myself to the bus stop at the end of the street. The weather was cold. The dry wind blowing through my thin shirt made my skin crawl. The bus stop was old. The metal roof was rusty. The yellow lights hanging on the poles flickered as if they were about to go out. I sat down on a cracked wooden chair, my back soaked in the cold from the damp wood. The whole neighborhood was quiet, except for the steady hum of the fluorescent lights. Then I saw him, on the other side of the street. Under the dim streetlight, there was a figure standing motionless. His posture was exactly like mine, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched, head slightly bowed. I squinted to look closely, my heart beating fast, and then I froze. That face, it was my face. Not a look-alike, not a person with similar features. It was an exact copy of me, from the lines, the posture, to the old jacket I was wearing. He raised his face, and I saw the smile. A crooked smile, too long, forced, but still containing something. Satisfied and sick, my whole body froze. I wanted to scream, but my throat was blocked. He didn't step forward, didn't come closer. He just stood there, on the other side of the empty street, smiling and staring at me. A series of questions rang through my head. Was this a joke? A copycat? Or a real-life nightmare? But the only answer I felt was a chill down my spine. The night wind blew, carrying the musty stench from the sewers. I tried to turn away, not to look at him anymore. But when I turned back, he was no longer. There, the bus stop was silent, just me and the flickering yellow lights. I let out a breath, thinking that I was so tired that I was hallucinating. But then, a whisper sounded right behind me, so cold that my heart almost stopped. I see you. I turned round. There was no one. Just the cracked wooden bench and the pitch blackness. My chest was aching. I knew for sure this was not a dream. This was one of those horror stories I had only heard about, but now I was the main character. When the old bus screeched to a stop, I rushed onto it without daring to look back. However, when the window vibrated with the sound of the engine, I glanced outside and saw him standing right by the door, his crooked smile pressed against the glass, looking straight at me. There was more. That smile was just the beginning. What was following me was not simply a hallucination. Stay tuned for part 2 of this ghost story series, where the terrifying secret will gradually be revealed. Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. The bus shook. As it rolled, the air inside was cold. The smell of old plastic and rusty metal filled my nose, making me nauseous. There were only a few passengers, an old man in a woolen cap, head tilted back, dozing. A girl sitting at the back of the bus wearing headphones so loud I could hear the bass blaring out, and the seat behind me was completely empty. I gasped, my heart pounding, still not daring to turn my head to look at the window. The image of him, my copy, with a crooked smile pressed against the glass, was still imprinted in my mind, like an indelible burn mark. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking. No signal. The screen flickered, the battery only had 9%. I turned on the front camera to look at my reflection, the only way to be sure I was sitting alone. But as soon as the image appeared, I froze. On the screen, the space behind me was no longer empty. There was a face. It was my face. Eyes wide and still, lips stretched into a crooked smile. He sat right in the back seat, staring at the back of my head, as if waiting for me to notice his presence. I jerked back. It was empty, just the cracked seats, the flickering white neon lights. I turned to look at the phone, and that face was still there, smiling, growing clearer. I dropped the phone on the floor. The sound of the collision echoed in the quiet cabin, causing the old man to open his eyes, looking around in confusion. But no one noticed the horror except me. I bent down to pick up the phone. When I looked up, the empty seat behind me was no longer empty. There he was. It was still me, but the eyes were black with no whites, and the smile was cracked from ear to ear. I jumped up, almost falling. "What the hell?" I shouted, my voice shaking. The old man grimaced. The girl pulled down her headphones, both of them looking at me like I had lost my mind. But to me, the horror was real. My doppelganger tilted his head, his smile growing more distorted. No one else in the car saw him, only me. I backed away, hitting the handrail. He didn't move. But when the car braked sharply at the intersection, his silhouette leaned toward me, his mouth open as if to whisper. The sound rang out right next to my ear, though his lips didn't move. "You can't escape. I'll always be here." The driver honked loudly, and the car continued moving. I looked around, looking for help, but all eyes were suspicious, cold. In their eyes, I was just a madman screaming to himself. I turned around, and the back seat was empty again. My whole body trembled. Cold sweat soaked the back of my shirt. I knew for sure this was no longer a coincidence or a sick joke. That thing had followed me like a curse. A ghost story coming to life in real life. When the bus stopped at the next stop, I didn't wait another second. I rushed out, ignoring the driver's puzzled gaze. But that moment, I heard a hoarse laugh coming from the windows behind me. The same laugh as mine. And then, what was that person, anyway? A ghostly clone, or a cursed entity trying to replace me? Stay tuned for part 3, where the haunted stories began to ingrain themselves into my life, gradually taking away my last sanity. Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk, I jumped off the bus, my legs shaking so much, I almost fell flat on the sidewalk. The street was quiet, save for the yellow streetlights and a few trucks passing by in the night. The air outside was cold, but compared to the stuffy cabin, I felt like I had just escaped from a tomb. I walked quickly, then ran, wanting to get away from that bus stop as quickly as possible. My heart was pounding, my breathing was rapid, but after a few steps, I heard footsteps. At first, I thought it was an illusion, just the echo of my own footsteps. But no, the footsteps didn't quite match. Every time I stopped, the footsteps continued, slow, dragging, as if someone was deliberately letting me know he was right behind me. I turned around. The street was deserted. Not a soul in sight. "No way," I whispered, cold sweat pouring. "DOWN," I kept walking. The footsteps sounded again, clearer this time. The rhythm was identical to mine, but heavier, longer, as if a shadow were deliberately mimicking my every move. The streetlights in the distance flickered, then went out. Darkness swallowed the road. I hesitated, then mustered up the courage to step forward. And then I saw, under the last remaining light, a familiar figure stood there. His back was bent, his head tilted at an unnatural angle, his face hidden in the darkness. He slowly raised his face, and I saw myself with hollow black eyes, a smile that reached from ear to ear, teeth as white as broken bones. I screamed and ran. The footsteps followed closely behind, getting faster and faster. In a panic, I dashed into a small alley. The walls were damp, mossy. The smell of sewers rushed straight into my nose. I slipped, my hand grazed the broken glass. Blood gushed out bright red. I tried to get up, turned around to look. My mouth was dry, my heart was about to burst. But the alley was empty. No one was there. I gasped, leaning against the wall, thinking I had finally escaped. But when my eyes accidentally passed through the dusty glass of an abandoned store, I almost stopped breathing. In that frosted glass, there was more than just me reflected. Standing right next to me, head bowed and smiling, was him. The smile was cracked, and a whisper rang out right next to my ear. Even though his lips in the mirror were only parted, the more you run, the closer I get. I jumped up, my heart about to explode. The alley echoed with a hoarse, long-lasting laughter, swirling around in my head like a madness, and more. I couldn't escape him. Every glass, every shadow, he was lurking. In part, for I will learn that this thing doesn't just want to follow me. It wants to completely replace my existence. Hello, everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk, I ran out of the alley, my heart pounding like it was about to tear my chest apart. The street was deserted, the wind whistling through the dry trees like a moan. With every step, I felt him right behind me, but when I turned around, there was no one but the darkness. I reached the shabby, rented room on the third floor of an old apartment building. I closed the door tightly, pulled the iron bar closed, all the windows, and sat down on the floor, breathing heavily. It's just an illusion, I reassured myself. I'm just too tired. But then, the mirror hanging in the room shook slightly. I stopped. In the mirror, the reflection was me, pale, tired, but still me. I stepped closer, reaching out to touch the cold glass. At that moment, the reflection smiled. Not my smile. I panicked and stepped back. The reflection was still standing still, lips stretched to the point of cracking, dripping black blood. His eyes were hollow and hollow, but I felt like he was looking straight into my brain. No, it can't be ice, T-M-M-E-R-E-D. He raised his hand, the same gesture as mine, but not to imitate. The hand in the mirror pressed hard against the glass, the mercury spreading like water. I heard a faint hiss, like nails scraping metal. I turned on the light, then rushed to pull the cloth over the mirror. But as soon as it was covered, a hoarse laugh rang out from within, echoing throughout the cramped room. I covered my ears, but the laughter still pierced my head. "You're tired, let me take you." I trembled, not knowing if I was awake or in a nightmare. I ran to the bed, buried my face in the pillow, but even on the opposite wall, I could still see his shadow, distorted, elongated. the cracked smile still there. I knew for sure he no longer wanted to intimidate. He wanted to possess me, and more. He had crept into the room, into the mirror, into my shadow. In part 5, I would realize not just a clone, but other secrets about his terrifying origins, a truth that made me no longer believe in myself. Hello, everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk, I couldn't sleep. The shrill laughter from the mirror still echoed in my head. I took a hammer and smashed the mirror into pieces. The glass shattered, the light reflecting off thousands of distinct smiles. I thought it was over. But then, in every piece of broken glass on the floor, I still saw him. Each piece was a distorted face, laughing at the same time. I almost went crazy. I gathered all the pieces of glass into a trash bag and threw them into the bin in the hallway, but when I turned back, there was still a black streak on the wall, like his shadow had not left. I turned on my laptop, trying to find something to distract my mind. But as soon as the screen booted up, the desktop wallpaper, which was originally a landscape photo, was replaced by something else, an old photo of me as a child. But next to me, there was another child, exactly like me. He looked straight into the lens and smiled crookedly. I froze. I never had a twin brother, never. I quickly opened each folder. In family photos, birthdays, graduations, somewhere he was always present. Sometimes standing far behind me, sometimes sitting right next to me, but I never noticed. A shadow silently intruding into my memories, making me no longer know what was real and what was fake. I shakily called my mother. The phone rang for a long time before she picked up. Her voice was hoarse from sleep. I asked, "Mum, when I was little, did I have a twin brother?" There was silence on the other end of the line. After a long while, she only answered curtly, "Why are you asking this?" Her voice trembled, as if she was hiding something. Then she hung up. I was stunned. My throat tightened. The familiar laughter rang out again. This time not from the mirror, not from the glass, but right behind me. I turned around quickly. The room was empty. But on the laptop screen, the text automatically typed out one letter at a time, even though I didn't touch the keyboard. I'm not just in the present. I'm always in your past. The screen flickered. His face appeared, filling the entire frame. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. His smile was torn but full of satisfaction. I turned off the computer, unplugged it, but the screen was still bright. The laughter echoed throughout the room as if it wanted to tear my mind apart. I held my head, screaming in despair. This thing was no longer just a ghost following me. It was a part of my memory, a part of my life that I didn't know about. And more. If he had always been in my memory, could it be that from the beginning until now, I had never been the only one? In part 6, the family secret would be revealed, and I would learn the horrifying truth about this haunting clone. Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk, I couldn't take it anymore. The laughter from the laptop had become a haunting song in my head. I decided to find out the truth, no matter how horrible it was. I called my mother again. This time, she didn't answer. I was so restless that I decided to take the night bus back home immediately. The long road, each lamppost shining on the car window, reflecting my face and his face, alternately appearing like a sick joke. I had to reassure myself. I have to ask. I have to know what he is. When I got back to the old house, my mother sat quietly in the living room, her hands tightly clasping an old photo. She looked at me, her eyes red. The air was thick and heavy. I pressed on. "Mum, did I once have a twin brother?" She didn't say anything. Tears welled up, rolling down her wrinkled face. She nodded shakily. I was speechless. "They never told me about this in my whole life," she said in a choked voice. "The day you were born, you weren't alone. There were two of you, but your brother was very weak," the doctor said. "He wouldn't make it. We buried him. There was only a small box, no picture, no name. Your father didn't want anyone to mention it," he said. "That would be fine." I felt a chill down my spine. A child forgotten, erased from the family's memory. But if he was dead, then why did I see him in every picture, in the mirror, in the dark? My mother squeezed my hand, whispering, "But after the burial, I saw his shadow many times. He stood in the corner of the house. He sat right next to your crib. I thought I was delusional, until your father died in the accident. The room was dead silent. Only the ticking of the clock remained." I asked, trembling, "Mum, you're saying Dad saw it too?" Mum was silent. Her eyes wandered somewhere, as if recalling a terrible memory. Then she burst into tears. "Dad once said there were nights when it lay right next to him on the bed, smiling as if it had never died." My blood froze. I stepped back, my mind spinning. So, he was not an illusion, nor a cruel joke. He was a buried memory, a soul that had never been recognized, never been named. I looked around the house. Every picture on the wall, every glass frame, every dark corner, everything seemed to have eyes watching. And in my head, a whisper rang out. "Not from Mum, nor from me. You owe me a life." My whole body trembled, and more. If he is my forgotten twin, will he return to seek justice, or to steal a life that never belonged to me? In Act 7, the nightmare takes a step further, as he begins to appear in real life, not just in mirrors and memories. Hello, everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk, I left the house in a state of confusion. The truth my mother had told me was like a knife to the heart. I had a twin brother, but he died at birth. At least, that's what my family wanted to believe. But my experiences proved otherwise. He wasn't dead. He was here, watching me, waiting for his chance. That night, I checked into a small hotel, hoping to escape the house filled with ghosts of memories. I closed the door, drew the curtains, and left the lights on. But in the pale white light, my shadow on the wall no longer matched my movements. I lifted my hand, and the shadow raised its hand a beat slower. I turned my head, and the shadow looked at me longer than necessary. Panicked, I rushed to turn off the light. But in the pitch blackness, I heard footsteps, not mine, coming from the bed. I turned the light back on shakily, and there he was, on the bed. Just a few feet away was my doppelganger. But this time, it wasn't in the mirror, not in the reflection. He was really there. His body a haze of smoke, his eyes black, his cracked smile full of pleasure. I backed away, my back against the wall, my mouth stammering, "You, what do you want from me?" He tilted his head, his teeth grinding. Without moving his lips, I could hear his voice echoing in my head. "You're living my life. Now, I want it back." I screamed, rushing to the door. But when my hand touched the handle, it was so cold it burned. The door didn't open. I turned around, he was right in front of me. The distance was only a few centimeters. I could smell the pungent smell, like damp earth mixed with old blood. I closed my eyes tightly, but his laughter rang out like 100 voices at once, calling out in my head, "There's no escape. I'll be with you until you're gone." I woke up. The room was empty. I lay on the floor, sweat soaking my shirt. Was it all a dream? I wasn't sure. But when I lifted my head, the crumpled sheets were still imprinted with indentations, as if someone had actually sat there, and more, he had stepped out into reality. In part 8, I would realize his presence was not just around me. It was starting to affect the people around him. No one was safe anymore. Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk, I left the hotel. At dawn, my eyes dark and my body exhausted. I thought the daylight would be safer. But I was wrong. As I sat on the bus back to the city, I noticed the strange looks from the passengers. A young girl sitting opposite me kept staring at me, her face pale, her lips trembling. I frowned and asked, "What's wrong?" She didn't answer, just tremblingly pointed to the empty seat next to me. I turned back to the still empty seat, but when I looked into the reflection of the glass, I saw him sitting there, a wide smile, his head tilted to look at me intently. I jumped up, screaming, causing the whole bus to panic. The other girl cried out, covering her face. The driver stopped the bus, snapping, "What's wrong with you?" But I couldn't explain, because at that moment, the girl pointed at me, sobbing, "No, not him." There was another person, exactly like him, sitting next to him. I saw him. My blood froze. So I wasn't the only one who saw him anymore. I ran away from the car, running headlong into the crowded street. But even though I was jostling in the crowd, I could still hear that laughter echoing from the shop windows, from the puddles, from the panicked eyes of strangers. When I got back to my old rented room, the neighbors were already crowded in the hallway. An old woman pointed at my door, her voice broken. "I saw two guys, exactly the same, enter the room last night, but only you came out." Everyone was whispering. I was trembling. My hands no longer had the strength to insert the key. I pushed the door open and almost collapsed. The room was empty, but on the wall, each of my old photos had been replaced. In all the photos, I was no longer alone. He stood next to me, with his arm around my shoulder, smiling a huge, triumphant smile. I screamed, throwing the photo to the ground. But from the hallway, the old woman spoke again, her voice trembling. He was just standing behind you." I turned around quickly, empty, but I heard him whisper clearly. This time not just to me, now everyone can see me, and more. He was no longer just my shadow. He had entered this world for others to witness. In Section 9, his public appearance would strike terror into anyone who encountered him. Hello, everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk rumors spread. Quickly, after that chaotic morning, the neighbors began to look at me strangely. Some avoided me, others whispered that they had seen two identical men walking through the hallway at night. I no longer knew if I was the center of a curse or some kind of sick joke. I decided to go outside, try to find a breather in the crowd. But in the middle of the crowded square, I knew I was wrong. I pushed my way through the crowd, the harsh sunlight pouring down. Amidst the loud laughter, I felt a strange silence. I turned around and my heart stopped. There he stood, no longer in the mirror, no longer in the darkness. He stood right in the middle of the crowd, just a few meters away from me. It was still, my face, but distorted, the smile torn, the eyes black as deep holes. Everyone around me saw it. They stopped, panicked, some screamed, some ran away. A child held his mother's hand tightly, crying, "Mum, why are there two of them the same?" The mother turned pale and pulled her child away. I stepped back, bumping into a young man. He cursed, but when he saw him, his face turned pale, his voice choked, "Oh my God," and then he ran away. He stood there, motionless, just looking at me and smiling. The smile spread, black blood oozed from the corner of his mouth, dripping into the puddle at his feet. But strangely enough, the blood did not disappear. It spread on the ground, forming distorted lines of letters. I looked down and saw clearly, not just you anymore. The crowd was in chaos. People jostled and ran away from the square. But I was stuck, unable to move my feet. When I looked up, he had disappeared. Laughter echoed through the empty square, echoing from all sides, as if the building, the walls, the glass itself were laughing. I collapsed, my eyes blurred, and in the last moment before I blacked out, I saw him standing on the highest roof, looking down at me, his cracked smile glinting in the sunlight, and more. He was no longer hidden. Now the whole world could see. In Chapter 10, I would learn that his presence not only caused terror, but also made people begin to wonder if I was the one who did not belong to this world. Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk, when I woke up, I found myself in a hospital. The bright white light made me dizzy. A doctor and two nurses stood around the bed, but their eyes were not comforting. They looked at me as if I was something strange. "He's awake," the doctor said softly, but I heard clearly, but this was definitely not the person who was brought. And first, my heart clenched. I jumped up, gasping for breath. "What did you say?" "I'm me. I'm the one who fainted in the square." The two nurses exchanged worried glances. Then one said, "They brought in a person with a face exactly like yours, but silent, eyes closed. And you, ... She shuddered. "You were found soon after, as if you appeared out of nowhere." I was stunned. So, ... He was also in this hospital. I rushed out of bed, ran down the hallway. The doctors and patients looked at me, everyone whispering, avoiding me. Some people even exclaimed, "It's him," I screamed. "No, I'm the real one. I'm the real one." But the more I screamed, the more people's eyes were filled with doubt and fear. They began to treat me like a monster. I pushed open the doors of each room, until I saw him. In the room at the end of the hallway, he lay there on the hospital bed. The oxygen tank was next to him, the white light shining on his face that looked exactly like mine. But gentle, calm, like a real person. Not the broken smile, not the deep black eyes. Just me, a perfect copy, but seemed more real than me. Everyone gathered around him, whispering, "This is the one who was saved. The one out there is fake." I collapsed, my eyes blurred. I screamed, in despair, "No, I'm the real one. He's fake. You don't understand anything." But when I looked into the hospital window, my face was distorted, my eyes were black, my mouth was torn. Just like him, you see, his voice echoed in my head. "I don't need to do anything. Others will suspect you, then you will disappear." Held my head, screaming. Laughter spread throughout the hospital corridor, causing everyone to run away. It was just me and him. One of us had to disappear, but who was the real one, and more? He had turned the world against me. In Act 11 of the finale, the final confrontation would take place. Only one would be allowed to survive. World. Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk, the alarm sounded. Throughout the hospital, I ran into the room where he was lying. The fluorescent lights flickered, the silhouette blurred. On the bed, he opened his eyes. His eyes were black like an endless pit. I rushed forward, screaming, "You are not me. I am the real thing." He sat up, a broken smile spreading across his face. "You say that for the rest of your life in vain. Look, everyone believes I am real, and you are just an unnecessary shadow." I rushed at him, both of us grappling. Punches, scratches, the sound of bones colliding echoed in the empty room. But every time I touched him, a cold feeling penetrated, like touching grave soil. He laughed, a hoarse laugh that rang in my ears. "You have occupied my life for too long. Now it is my turn." The light suddenly went out. In the darkness, all I could hear was heavy breathing, but I didn't know whose it was. I turned on the phone light. The dim light illuminated two identical faces. Both were me, both were distorted. Both were smiling. I screamed, using all my strength to throw one last punch. Darkness swallowed me. When the light returned, there was only one person sitting there, gasping for breath. It was me, I thought. It was me. Doctors and nurses rushed in, but their eyes were fixed on me in confusion. They whispered, "Who is he really is? He the same person as before?" I trembled, looking down at my blood-stained hands. In the mirror hanging in the corner of the room, the face reflected was smiling, while I was not. My heart clenched. Did I win, or did he take my place? Perhaps we will never know who is real and who is fake. And if one day, when you look in the mirror, you see a distorted smile that does not match yours, remember this story